Oh Lord, why? Why is the world like this? Why are people like this? Why did I do all the dumb things that I did when I was younger? Why do I keep doing all the dumb things that I do now? These are all expressions of lamentation. Lamentation is a very special kind of grief. It's that pain that we feel when we know that things could, should, or ought to be better, be different, be like they used to be like we want them to be. Lamentation is a yearning, a call from the soul to change everything. We've gotten bad at lamentations lately. Don't get me wrong, we're really good about whining, complaining, murmuring, but we're not very good at lamentations. So let's discuss this lost spiritual practice as we celebrate this new moon, walking down creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christo-Pagan Druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christo-Pagan Druid and sous chef to the Dagda.
Today, we're talking about that very happy thing, lamentation, which is a remarkable spiritual practice that should actually take you on a journey. That's what makes it different from just rumination or wallowing in your grief. But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on whatever the app is you're listening to us on. We do original Christo-Pagan and Druid episodes 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and you don't want to miss a thing. We're currently in the midst of our Druid Craft series, and you don't want to miss a thing. All right, let's just get into it.
I really liked in your opening where you set apart that distinction between lamentation and murmuring, or one of the other ones that I see so often these days is, as I like to call it, the wailing and gnashing of teeth. It's the thing that the few times you find hell described, it's described as a place where people wail and gnash their teeth. Dude, you're in a personal hell right now. Like, you're literally acting out your personal hell. I just want to be like, here, let me introduce you to Lamentations, some salvation through Lamentations so you don't have to be in hell.
I tend to think of lamentation as grief with purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that might sound like a strange phrase, but let's break that down for a little bit. Okay, so when I say grief with purpose, what does that mean? Lamentation isn't just woe is me, woe is, woe is me. That's a pity party. That's sorrow. That's grief. That can tend to go into rumination and wallowing. That's not what we're talking about here. Lamentation has a focus. It has an origin point and often has a destination. When something bad happens, say a national tragedy, this is a time for lamentations. Oh, how did we get here? Now, you don't stop there. The lamentation is a form of meditation. Okay, how do I answer this question? That's the next stage. It's not just blindly calling out to the universe, how did I get here? How did we get here? The book of Lamentations in the Bible is a recounting of the sins of the nation of Israel led to its captivity. How did we get here? If I wrote that book, it would have been very short. Josiah had to think way too highly of himself and burn all the other temples to our God and think that he was the only one who had the right to speak for God. Thought that he could step up to the Babylonians. He thought he could look them in the eye and say, I control this land, and they wouldn't smack him dead on the fields of Megiddo. Oh, how did we get to this place? Hezekiah didn't learn from the mistakes of his forefathers and did the same thing, and they decided, oh no, we're not dealing with these people anymore. They've been acting foolish for too long. Just pick them all up, take them away, sell them into slavery. We're done. And we're done. Book over. How do we get here? Those are actually covered in the book. He actually mentions those in there. Lamentations is often attributed to Jeremiah, possibly written by his scribe, but is this process of examining, how did we get to this place? How did we get to where we are?
Yeah, I find that reading to be very Baruch. Yeah, I went ahead and put the joke in. Enjoy, everyone.
But it's this process that we need to learn, because lamentation should never be about blaming others. That's anger. That's grief mixed with rage. People over there, they did it. That could be true, but it's usually not. We see a lot of fake lamentations in the United States in the early 1800s where they're like, why did the British invade? It's so crazy. I don't know why they're here. Did it have anything to do with the fact that we invaded Canada first? Like, we started the war, we invaded Canada, and Britain was like, no, you're going to leave our other colony alone, and came back and burned down our capital? Maybe. But see, that was trying to point outward. Oh, why are they being so mean? Why are they being so mean? We did this during the Civil War. Why is the North invading the South? I mean, all we did was violate our constitutional agreement and say that we were going to be our own separate country, even though we didn't go through any kind of process to make that legally binding because, we believe in contracts and everything, but we just want to own people. So we violated all kinds of agreements and laws and upset a whole bunch of people just to own other human beings. Why? What? Because you messed up. If you're pointing to others, why are they being mean to me? Yeah, well, maybe you got invaded. Maybe something bad happened. Maybe it wasn't entirely your fault. And this is where you have to be careful because not everything is worthy of lamentation. Not everything is worthy of lamentation. If you're minding your own business, walking down the street, and a random stranger walks up to you and smacks you in the face, and you have never met them before, never done anything bad to them before, have no connection to this person, it is not time for lamentation. Maybe we could have some lamentations about how society has degraded and that we don't have civility or whatever, maybe. But you didn't do anything in that situation, right? You're just walking down the street, minding your own business, and some rando just came up and caused trouble. Lamentation is this mixture of examining the situation that you're in, finding out what role you had to play in it, and figuring out what you can do better to prevent that from happening again in the future. It's a very specific and hopefully one that you never experience in your own life, except for I think we, the United States as a country, are experiencing it right now collectively. But personally, hopefully you never experience something in your own life that you have to go through this process on.
To to basically restate what you just covered, but from a different perspective, as practitioners of magic, we work in energies, we work in subtle energies, and this is all about, as we know, energy can't be created nor destroyed, but it will flow, and it's all about taking those energies that have come flooding in, both emotional and intention energy, all of that's flooding into you, and redirecting it into something constructive, something useful that can help you grow and be better going forward, rather than trying to dam it up and then having it back up till it gets to the point where there's so much pressure the dam bursts and you drown your little village that was living underneath the dam. That's the thing, is especially like the emotional energy is going to keep building unless you let it. It's got to flow, and you've got to redirect it, and redirecting it into something, using it so that it can be constructive energy into something that you can work on, which is something, because you can always work on yourself. And moving forward, if you believed in a thing and backed it wholeheartedly, and then turned out that those people behind that thing lied to you and it actually isn't that at all, that is an opportunity for Lamentations, where you can take all that energy, the emotions of betrayal, all that energy from the emotions of the people who've now been wronged by the thing that you backed, that's kind of coming flooding in, all that negative intention that comes flooding in, and you can take that energy of that tide and move it into something else where, yes, maybe next time you'll have more energy and being vigilant, and or take that energy and be more active and participatory, looking at the relationships between you and the people around you, and use that energy to build better relationships and live in better relationship with yourself and your community, rather than giving into trying to block it, which would just reinforce that compliance that probably led down that path. And if it was a poor decision and misinformation, you can use that energy to do more research, or to not participate until you've had enough time to discern. There's lots of things, but it's redirecting that energy and reusing it. That's what the lamentation is. Whereas the other acts are just you're just balling that up. You're either trying to turn a blind eye and letting that energy run wild in whatever way it's going to run, which is generally not a good thing, or you're trying to block it and it's just going to keep piling up until eventually it bursts forth and you end up getting surged and overwhelmed.
So it's important to remember that lamentations are always in the first person. They're either I or we, because it's an accusation, not a lamentation, if you're all about them and they. That's a whole different thing. And I think it can be helpful sometimes when we give some personal examples. So bear with me for a minute. We've had a couple like major moments of lamentation in our life. And one of them was related to why we had to leave California. We lived in California during the energy crisis. I don't know if people can remember back to 2004, but it was back during the energy crisis that didn't really exist, but was caused because the current president at the time did things at the federal level to ensure California would suffer. Now, I hear what you're saying, but Charlie, you're blaming others. Right now, I'm just trying to explain the facts and trying not to go into all of the agencies that were involved, but you can look it up if you want to. Like, they were literally selling power that was generated in California to Nevada and making us buy it back from Nevada at ridiculous prices. Like, the economy was so bad that our landlord had us basically doing maintenance on the property because, as she put it, no one can afford the rent right now. So if I kick you out, I'm just gonna have to pay somebody to take care of the lawn and take care of the plants and the things that need fixing. So if you're willing to take care of the stuff, you can stay in the house. That's how we didn't lose our house. It's just the economy was so bad, it was more economical for her to just let us live there as long as we were doing upkeep on the property than it was for her to kick us out. That's how bad the economy was. And this led to a lot of lamentations. We could have, well, we didn't vote for the guy that caused the problems, but what did we do wrong? What did we do to deserve this? Because that's usually where we starting our lamentations. Why did I deserve this? Why did this happen to me? Well, did I not do enough to explain to other people the threats that would arise from some of these policies that were clearly talked about in the election leading up to his election, right? Was I not clear enough? With our most recent election, I see a lot of people stressing over what could we have done differently. Well, maybe if we focus more on explaining why some of these things were important that are currently being gutted than posting dank memes and dunking on people. Maybe if we spent more time, maybe if spent more time trying to explain to people and helping people understand what a tariff is, right? We wouldn't have been where we are now. And that's kind of what we went through back then. Like, how could we explain why deregulating the energy sector was a bad idea? How maybe we could have explained that better to people and helped them understand this. And that's where we've developed this language about the commons. From that regulation is putting stuff into the commons so that we all have a stake in it. And it's not just for private companies and private individuals to exploit. That's where we started developing that language. It was out of that period of crisis in our own lives and lamentation in our own lives where we sought out ways, how could we try to do better? And obviously, given the elections that followed, we're not doing obviously not doing enough because we keep for people that have the same ideas and ideologies, right? So we do it again every time. Well, what could we do better? Why did this happen? Why did this happen? What could we do better? Because if you're just blaming other people, and this is really important, like this is the most important magical lesson you'll ever learn from this podcast of all the magical lessons we're going to teach. If you're always blaming external forces for why bad things are happening or why you're not getting where you need to go, you're never going to get where you need to go. If it's always somebody else's fault. Now, there's a lot of somebodies out there that are going to cause you problems, right? There are a lot of people out there that are going to stand in your way and try to block your way and put roadblocks in your way. But if your whole life is about them, you're not working on your own life. You need to be working on you. If they're putting roadblocks up, well, how do you go through the woods to get around the roadblock? How do you climb over the roadblock? How do you get yourself a monster truck that can just ride over those roadblocks like they don't even exist?
This is why
And
in this process, I'm sorry.
that's the point and purpose of lamentation.
This is why in this process, I really, really like the question you taught me quite some time ago. The question of, are you being the best you that you can be? Like in my case, I go, was I the best Brian I could be in that moment? And sometimes the answer is yes. I just take a lesson from Job, from the book of Job, and go, stuff happens. Sometimes it's just far beyond my understanding, far beyond my ability. I just have to have acceptance and move on, you know? But in a lot of cases, the answer to that question is no. I wasn't the best Brian I could be in that moment. And so then I have to ask myself, well, then because I answered no, there was a reason for that no. And I have to ask myself, what was the reason for saying no? And I have to be very honest. And though I'm being very personal, not take it personally. And usually that will show and be a learning moment that I can then go forward with for the next time. Because sometimes these life repeats itself. Sometimes these challenges will keep coming up until you pass. And if you don't want them to, if you don't want to be living through it, just get it right. All I can say, it seems a little rough, but there have been some life lessons that it took me 3 or 4 tries to get it right.
And
Sucked every time, but eventually got it right. It got a little easier, a little bit better.
and that story and that life lesson I got from the story of Rabbi Shlomo. Rabbi Shlomo was a rabbi who was always attended every wedding in town, every bar mitzvah in town, every party in town. Rabbi was there, and one day a man walked up to him and said, "Rabbi Shlomo, you're a holy man. You're a rabbi. Why are you always where the parties are?" He smiled and he said, "Because where there is celebration, there is life, and God is there. And when I die and I stand before my maker, I'll be asked, Rabbi Shlomo, were you the best Rabbi Shlomo you could be?" And I will smile and I will say yes. That's a simplified version of the story, but that resonated so strongly with me. Like that to me is the moral of life is, were you the best you that you could be? Don't think that for a minute I'm saying you need to justify oppression or justify anybody doing something bad to you. That's not the kind of soul searching we're doing here. We're not saying that people who are doing bad things, right? I've lost jobs for being queer, right? I lamented. I had a really good job that I was fired the moment my boss found out I was queer. And this was back in the 90s, and there was nothing I could do about it. I just had to accept it and move on with life because there were no legal recourses. And in a lot of states, there still aren't legal recourses to that. Top salesman in the company, best store in the franchise, found out that I was queer and fired me. I did a lot of soul searching. Like, should I have code switched better? Should I have masked who I am better? Should I have done a better job at hiding the real me better? No. Yes, I lost a really good job where I was making a lot of money because of her homophobia. The answer was not that I should have conformed to her. It was, this was really my radicalization moment. This is the moment where I became a queer advocate and where I became somebody who spoke out for queer rights everywhere that I could and at every moment I could. Because what I realized was I was just living my life. I wasn't part of any of the movements. I wasn't part of any of the change that needed to happen in society. Very few people in my life knew that I was queer. I was not very open about it. And that if I wanted to see society change, I would have to take those risks. And I knew what those risks were. I had already been gay bashed at that point. I had already, like I just said, lost a job at that point. I was just about of the age where I was about to move out on my own and start having to worry about housing and all that, right? But it was in that soul searching that no, we don't justify what the oppressors do to us, but we do start finding those ways that how can I fight back the best way for me to fight back? And because I'm loud and I'm outspoken, and I mean, I think y'all are starting to get a sense of my personality. Speaking up was my solution. That's where I got to in my lamentations. Why did I lose my job? Because I shouldn't have had that job in the first place. Why was I not so queer that she noticed right from the gate during the interview and used that bad F word in the interview? So I knew what kind of person I was working with, right? This is a person I'd worked with for a while. I thought of her as a friend. And yet she found out I was queer, called me the bad F word, and fired me right then and there. No, the problem was I wasn't me enough, so she hired me in the first place. I never should have had that job. She should have looked at me and seen me for what I was. So I could have seen her for what she was, and I wouldn't have made the mistake of having so many people love her company. See, I did a lot of good work for her that lasted longer than it should have because I went around and told everybody what she did. I made sure all of my best customers knew what she did and stopped shopping with her, right? Because I should have done all that good work for her. I should have been out proud and authentic enough that I hadn't supported somebody who actively had those feelings about me, right? But it took soul searching to get there because when you're making a lot of money and you lose a job making a lot of money,
It's easy to think about all the money that you're making and not realizing how much you are enriching her
yeah,
business and how
oh yeah,
many
because
people you are having support her in her business she should have never had in the first place.
those are the lessons that I learned. But that's what Lamentations is for. It's always in the first person. So it can be about the corporate we, or it can be about I. And it's not trying to find blame. We're grieving
Because
over what happened and trying to find the path forward to prevent it from ever happening again.
part of that process is remembering, once again, we fight against powers and principalities. So it's always about the systems. Yes, there are people involved in the various systems, oftentimes puppets of them themselves. Keeping that in mind, because she had a choice. She could have not said that F word. She also could have chose to come back around and been like, hey, you know what? I thought about it and I was wrong in the moment. She still could have chose to change. But the system is what's wrong. That's what needed to be dragged into the light. That's why we're not naming her name now
Yeah.
or her business,
Yeah.
because it's the system of oppression is the misogyny that underlies homophobic action.
I
The
will say her
misogyny.
business did go out of business.
Oh, yeah, her business is gone. It doesn't exist. It died a long time ago. A lot of these systems of oppression, when they get dragged out into the light, a lot of times they just shrivel up. Like a lot of the whole thing, evil can't be before light. It just vanishes. It shrivels up and disappears once it's dragged out into the light. That's the other big thing with the Lamentations is it's about that process. You're dragging it out into the light and
I,
just watching what burns away.
I keep thinking of that line from Luther, right?
Yeah,
Introduce them to that fire, right?
fire,
Take your
fire,
enemies in front of
fire, fire,
God,
fire,
introduce them to that light.
fire, fire. Yeah, so much. It is so much the truth there.
But that song is a good way to help you understand the spirit that we're talking about when we're talking about Lamentations. You know, that whole chorus, if it were up to me, I wouldn't give nobody no sympathies. I'd take away their pain. I would give them everything if this world were mine. That energy is what we're talking about. Like I said in the introduction, it's not about wallowing in it.
Yeah,
It's not about ruminating in it.
yeah,
It's not about blaming yourself or others.
yeah.
It's about actually finding out what went wrong. How did this happen? And sometimes things are just random, and that sucks. But that's when you need to start understanding the difference between lamentations, grief, misery, wallowing, pity parties, whatever you want, off whichever wherever you fall on the spectrum, because they're different things. The process of lamentations is one of finding out what part did I play in this bad thing. Not that this bad thing was my fault. It's what part did I play in this bad thing? And how can I never do that again?
Accountability and moving forward. You could see this with the US that is struggling with this over and over and over again. Every generation, they should have limitations over what happened with slavery, especially the chattel slavery in this country. But every generation that comes up, they end up wallowing or they end up trying to
And
uh,
what they're doing now,
just
trying to find ways
attribute.
to justify it.
Yeah, where they go, well, I'm not taking personal blame for something that I wasn't even around for, and then try to justify it. And it's like, look, no, if you just went through the process of lamentation, take that personal accountability that our ancestors, all of our ancestors, played some part in that, probably multiple parts, because it's far enough generations back that we probably have ancestors on both sides of the argument, or that were accountable because of inactivity or passive acceptance. The system of oppression and cultural appropriation continues. And if we could just be accountable, we could then be aware of it. We could put our energies towards maybe not doing it again. So many are trying to repeat yet again.
Mhm.
We could actually maybe become aware and stand up against those systems of oppression and cultural appropriation each time it pops up. Because at least then, when we want to take solace in going, well, my family was on the right side of the argument. Are you still on the right side of the argument? That's what the Lamentations for. Are you personally on the right side of the argument? Or did you watch someone do something racist in front of you say a week ago and you were quiet
Like, I think
and
we all
said
need
nothing.
to that topic, like, the one thing we always need to point out to people, I keep hearing this, "We abolished slavery. America abolished slavery." Da, da. We did not. We did not.
Nope.
We changed where it was. Actually, read the 13th Amendment. Read it very carefully. We abolished slavery, except
Except
wait, if there's an exception, it didn't happen.
if I'm gonna get you $20, like, except on a day that ends in Y, you're not getting $20 from me.
There's an exception in there,
There's an exception in there. Doesn't exist.
except in cases of imprisonment. Oh, did we really abolish it? Did we? Did we? Because I don't think you apologize by saying accept. I don't think you change your ways. Like, I'm never going to drink again, except on my birthday and at parties and on the weekend and when I get home from work.
I'm
Hmm.
quitting smoking, except in social gatherings. So you're still smoking. We're social people. We gather socially all the time.
That's a big part of what we're talking about when we say find out where you were, what part did you play? Because very often, when especially certain bad things happen to us, there is a lie that we have been convinced to believe that helped to get us into a situation. And if you can identify that lie and learn to not fall for that lie again or similar or adjacent lies, you'll get to a good place in the end. And I think that's a really good lesson to learn in the via-Negativa. I think we're all learning it right now. And I don't think we're learning the things that we need to learn from it. That's a whole other episode now, isn't it? I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I hope that it has meant something for to you. I don't know what to say to put in the comments because this is a very personal one, and I don't want to bring up past traumas for people. So
Heart emojis.
yeah, I was about to say, if you felt as if you've gone through this process, you can just leave a heart emoji in there. If you think that there's something that I missed in the process of lamentation, I would love to see that in the comments as well, because we're always learning. Never take anything that I say or anybody else says as gospel truth. We're all here sharing what knowledge we have, trying to make the world a better place, and we can all continue and keep learning. So if you think that I got something wrong, or if you think that there's an aspect of this that I missed, you can leave that in the comments too. I'd love to keep learning with you all because you all teach me a lot. Alrighty. If you're listening to us on Spotify or YouTube, you can leave a comment right there. If you listen to us anywhere else, even if it says that you can leave a comment, they don't let us know. So head on over to, so leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. And then head on over to creationspaths.com and click on chat. You can leave a message there and we will see it and be able to get back to you. While you're there, if you have any money you can pass our way, we offer monthly and annual memberships. Thank you so much to our latest annual member. You mean the world to us. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am Cia Dorset on both. And you can support us directly through Cash App through the cash tag CreationsPaths. If you don't have any money right now or don't know that we're the kind of people that you want to give your hard-earned treasure to, that's perfectly all right. But if we've ever done anything that you've liked, enjoyed, or that has helped you, or that you think that can help others, be sure to share it with them if you would, please, because that really does help us out more than you know. All right. Let's say a prayer to the Archangel Uriel. Oh, blessed Uriel, light upon the path that guides us through all of the dark valleys through which we must go. Help us to find all of the things that we need to change and all of the places in us that are broken that need healing so that we can make it to the other side stronger, more faithful, and more able to carry out the great work. Amen.
Amen.